Yeah, man, we got into the business when we were like, I say 10 and 11 years old. It was like a really gradual process, without throwing your clothes on backwards or whatever. JD, I think he had like, one day he had just came through Chris' house or whatever with his pants on backwards and just telling us, check this out, check this style out. And
what's happening, Puff? I'll be back to you if JD ain't had enough. Yeah? Jermaine Dupri, king of the if you ask me, baby.
Duo introduced the trend of wearing pants backwards. Their video would also be a poignant example as to why many other people in the 90s began sporting their clothes backward.
Maybe you can turn around now.
I mean, like, around the neighborhood we would dance and sing a little bit, but I mean, we really got into it a lot when we met Jermaine Dupri, our producer.
Okay.
This is why kids should not be in the music industry. It is alleged that in 1993, Jada Pinkett not only sold weed to Kelly, but also slept with him. Him being 15, her 22.
You think Jada Pinkett was entangling? She was entangling with Chris Kelly.
Kris "Daddy Mac" Smith, one half of the legendary 90s rap duo Kris Kross, is finally speaking out on what really happened to his late friend Chris "Mac Daddy" Kelly. And let's just say, this is yet another disturbing story about what happens to young stars in this evil industry. For years, rumors have been floating around that Kris Kross were victims of exploitation, manipulation, and being used and abandoned by people like their former mentor Jermaine Dupri, Diddy, and even Jada Pinkett Smith. But now those rumors may not just be rumors anymore. Kris and Chris were just 11 and 12 when they got discovered in an Atlanta mall, thrown into the spotlight with baggy clothes, platinum records, and a global hit like Jump. But behind the fame, the price they paid is truly horrifying. Now, as for the late Mac Daddy, his passing in 2013 was ruled an OD, but fans are convinced that even if he did OD, he must have been pushed to that point by some trauma from his early career days. And while Jermaine Dupri had denied any wrongdoing, there are now some truly disturbing stories surfacing about his alleged role in Kris Kross's downfall. And then there's Jada Pinkett Smith, who allegedly had a bizarre entanglement with Chris Kelly when he was entirely too young. So what was really going on behind closed doors? Was Mac Daddy's tragic passing the result of some deep trauma from entering the music industry at such a young age? Let's break it down.
These were kids in an adult industry. Even Jermaine Dupri, who played a fatherly role for the boys, was in his early 20s himself, so they were bound to be exposed to something they weren't supposed to eventually.
I can tell you who he smoked his first joint with. I can tell you who he had his first drink with. I can tell you who he's with when he had sex with somebody who put him up to that,
These days, Kris "Daddy Mac" Smith rarely talks about Kris Kross or his late friend Mac Daddy, and it's completely understandable. The two met in first grade and were like brothers long before fame changed their lives forever. So losing Mac Daddy was a devastating blow, and Daddy Mac had mostly kept his feelings private. However, in a rare recent interview, he finally opened up, and when asked about how he's coping with the loss, he shared that music helps him heal. But he also can't stop thinking about everything they went through as kids in the industry. He said, "When we entered into the music business, we had to grow up fast, working, performing at a young age." And while he didn't go into detail, his words reignited interest in those disturbing rumors and allegations surrounding Kris Kross's time in the industry. And now fans are taking a closer look at what really happened behind the scenes and whether these two young stars were victims of industry predators. Kris Kross, Kris "Mac Daddy" Kelly, and Kris "Daddy Mac" Smith were only 11 years old when producer Jermaine Dupri discovered them in 1990. And just a year later, these two young stars were on top of the world with their hit song Jump. That track was everywhere, on the radio, in music videos, and it dominated the Billboard Hot 100 for 8 straight weeks, and it even went double platinum. But their success didn't stop there. Kris Kross dropped 3 studio albums, all produced by Jermaine Dupri, and each one was a big hit. Their debut album, Totally Crossed Out, went multi-platinum, while their second album went platinum, and their third earned a gold certification. And get this, Michael Jackson personally invited them to be an opening act on his Dangerous tour. Now, there's no doubt that Jermaine Dupri had a real gift for discovering and developing talent. And with his guidance, Kris Kross didn't just become one of the biggest acts of the early 90s. They were also the youngest stars to take over the music scene at the time.
To say hip hop array, and the winner is my posse, Kris Kross.
Hey yo, first of all, we want to thank God for making all this happen. Next, we want to thank our fans, because we wouldn't be here today, for selling 5 million records too.
But there's a darker side to this story. When Chris Kelly tragically passed away from a suspected OD in 2013,
tragedy.
Jermaine's bizarre reaction to questions about Chris Kelly set off a wave of gossip and speculation, and fans couldn't get over how weird it was that he didn't know Chris's exact age when he passed, or how nervous he got when asked if they stayed in touch. Naturally, this led to a lot of questions, like what was really going on behind the scenes? Why did Jermaine seem so uncomfortable? Now, to be clear, Jermaine's reaction doesn't prove he actually did anything foul to the late Chris Kelly, but that didn't stop the rumors from spreading, and people couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story than what was being told. Meanwhile, fans started looking deeper into Kris Kross's history, and what they found was disturbing. It seemed like Chris and Kris were exposed to some really messed up things in the industry, and Jermaine didn't do much to protect them from it. After Chris Kelly's tragic passing, fans started digging up old Kris Kross interviews from the early 90s, and they noticed that when the duo first blew up, Chris Kelly was outgoing, full of smiles, and radiated confidence in every interview. But a few years later, the difference was shocking. Jermaine said nothing. And now, with the rumors about Jermaine and Kris Kross resurfacing once again, fans are starting to connect the dots to other industry horror stories, like the allegations about Usher's time at Puffy Flavor Camp.
The next Michael Jackson.
But to become a star, he had to spend a year with a man he barely knew.
You've changed your name to Love. I have become Love. Okay.
We're sending you over to something called Puffy Flavor Camp.
Did you feel like that took away from your childhood at all?
Flavor Camp was Usher's last chance at having a career.
Giving up is not an option in life. There's always a way.
The allegations are absolutely horrific.
Were you the only kid at Puffy Flavor Camp?
Where we hanging out and what we doing, we can't really disclose.
Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, accused of and assault.
But Usher didn't just survive Flavor Camp. He thrived from it.
On top of that, people are also noticing how Jermaine initially stayed very quiet when Cassie's lawsuit against Diddy dropped. But then, when Homeland Security raided Diddy's homes in March, Jermaine actually came out and defended him. Let's rewind to May 2023. Jermaine was hyped to announce that he and Diddy had finally set a date for their epic Versus battle. So the battle was supposed to go down in September 2023, but Diddy must have gotten a heads up that Cassie was about to hit him with that lawsuit in November, because he suddenly canceled the whole thing. As for Jermaine's response to Diddy's legal drama, at first he stayed low and refused to comment. But then, once Diddy's homes got raided and reports asked him about it, Jermaine got super defensive and tried to flip the script by bringing up Donald Trump, almost like he was suggesting Diddy was being unfairly targeted.
I also want to ask you about everything happening to Diddy. Were you surprised when you heard about the raid?
Yeah, I was surprised about the raid, but I mean, I think that it's a foolish act that nothing happened, so it's like, why? I don't even understand all the emotion. You know?
Yeah, I mean, he's been sued a lot, but we don't know exactly what's going on.
Donald Trump gets sued every day, you know what I mean? So I just don't know, I don't know why they're making it so serious, like, because it seems like, you know, like I say, celebrities and people of power and money, they get sued all the time. It's not something that is like, it's not the first time that this has ever happened.
Some people are saying if the federal government is doing the raid, they must have something on him. You think he did it? You think he did anything illegal?
I don't buy it. I don't think so. Yeah. All right.
But hold up, because Jermaine and Diddy aren't the only two industry figures who allegedly preyed on Kris Kross. We also can't forget about the rumored female deviants either, specifically Jada Pinkett Smith. According to multiple insiders, Jada may have taken advantage of Chris Kelly when he was starting out. Now, we all know Jada's usually quick to clap back at any shade thrown her way, but strangely, she stayed quiet about these serious allegations. Rumors about Jada and young Chris Kelly have been around for a long time, but now they're back in the spotlight thanks to rapper Daz Dillinger, who worked closely with Tupac and produced his legendary album All Eyes on Me. In a recent interview, Daz dropped a bombshell saying that Jada had an entanglement with Chris Kelly back in 1993, and this would have made Chris about 14 or 15 years old, while Jada was 21 or 22 at the time.
You think Jada Pinkett was entangling? She was entangling with Chris Kelly from mother Kris Kross, because Kris Kross was in the room and he was like, Jada Pinkett is at the door, but don't leave. Take this weed. Chill. We like, damn, this mother gave us an ounce of weed. We're gonna kick it right here. Then he came back in, he said, yeah, that was Jada Pinkett. I'm like, damn, this is Jada Pinkett at a young age.
By the way, remember when Jaguar Wright said she heard stories about young men running away screaming from Jada and Will Smith's house, all because of their so-called mentorship?
Yeah.
They're both bisexual, they do weird things in their house, and young men have left their house screaming to get away from them in their mentorship. Meek Mills. Bashir Gray. Left that house screaming.
So with all these disturbing stories about Kris Kross resurfacing, especially after Jermaine Dupri publicly defended Diddy, fans are starting to connect the dots. Could there be some truth to what Cat Williams said about Jermaine? And do you think Chris Kelly's tragic OD was really the result of trauma he faced as a young star in an industry full of predators? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't miss this next video.